So there's management intensive grazing and rotational grazing, and all those are wonderful tools that I'd learned about 40 some years ago. Then there's the organic matter that I was really learning about for the first time and really understanding it, and this awareness that as we build that organic matter in our soil, it's the sponge that literally holds everything. It holds more moisture and holds more nutrients and it holds more biology.
That's Blake Alexandre from Alexandre Family Farm in Del Norte County, California. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock, and today I'm going to talk to Blake about his farming operation up there in Northern California, how many cows he's milking, what he does to take care of the soil and his pastures, the difference between A1 and A2 milk, plus a whole lot more. And you might be wondering, wait a minute, where's the industrial hemp? Well, there's not too much talk of industrial hemp in this episode. It's mostly about regenerative farming and, a glimpse of life on a California dairy farm. I will say that Blake was part of the county commission that wrote the policy around hemp and cannabis for his county, and we will talk about that. But mostly this episode is about regenerative agriculture and how soil health practices make a huge difference in any type of farming. All right, we'll be right back after these messages.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you in part by New Holland Agriculture. New Holland is a proud Lancaster County company with a strong global presence. For over 125 years, they've been building, selling, and servicing machinery to help farmers feed a busy world. You can learn more about this world-class leader in farm equipment at newholland.com. This episode is brought to you in part by IND Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana, where their mission is to provide innovative agricultural products and services to connect American farmers with the pioneers and businesses that see hemp as a way to bring real and lasting change to our communities and planet. IND Hemp. Okay, welcome back. So we're going to forego the normal news nuggets segment of the show today and just get into the interview. I don't know if you can tell from my voice, but I am fighting a terrible cold, and talking isn't really my thing today. And breathing is really hard, so we're just going to get into this interview that I recorded a couple of weeks ago with Blake from Alexandre Family Farm in California. Blake Alexandre from Alexandre Family Farm, welcome to our podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Eric. Thank you.
Yeah, so I wonder if you could, give us the introduction. Where are you? What do you do?
Sure. We, along with my wife, Stephanie, we are in Del Norte County, extreme Northern California, right on the coast, about a mile from the ocean, and maybe 10 miles or so out of Oregon. And we are organic dairy farmers primarily. We also started some free-range pastured eggs years ago, and we've got a lot of chickens, and so we sell eggs in a label that says Alexandre Kids, and we sell milk with a label that says Alexandre Family Farm.
All right. Well, tell me about the farm. How many acres you farming, how many cows you milking, that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah, we're actually quite large for this region. We've got land in 3 counties, Humboldt County, Del Norte County, and then in Eastern California in Modoc County. We grow hay over there. We've got a couple thousand acres of hay, alfalfa hay. And then here on the coast, we've got about 6,000 acres total of irrigated pasture, which is not necessarily needing irrigation most of the year. We irrigate for about 5-6 months in the summer, but it's all green, permanent pasture. We've got a phenomenal growing season out here that is our winter temperatures and our summer temperatures are only 11 degrees apart. So
wow.
We literally have grass growing all year long and just very productive soil. We milk cows on 5 locations here in the 2 coastal counties, and we milk about a total of 5,000 cows, including the dries, and we've got another 4,000 young stock of heifers that are growing up to become milk cows.
Wow. Okay. Can you sort of give me some of the high-level stats about your milk output?
Sure. It takes a huge team of people to do all that. We've got 5 kids that are primarily, 23 to 31 years old. The oldest 3 are all married and working in the operation with us. And it takes a lot of people, like I'm saying. So we've
Sure.
probably got 140 total employees right now, and
Okay.
then we'll add a few more here for the summer as we start seasonal work of irrigation and harvesting some feed. We, like I said, milking, a lot of cows, about 4,000 all the time in the milk tank, and then another 1,000 that are, pregnant and going dry and coming in and having babies. And so our production on a daily basis, right now we hit 19,000 gallons this week per day. And then we will float up to about 23,000 gallons as spring comes on a little stronger here. Cows are actually out grazing already for the last 3 weeks. And we started grazing once a day. Now we're grazing twice a day. And then of all that milk, about 30 to 35% of it is sold under our label. And so we actually own a processing facility down in the Bay Area and right next to Oakland in a town called San Leandro.
Okay.
And another 25 employees down there processing our milk and packaging up and selling it across the country, really.
Oh, wow. Okay. So tell me about your herd. What breed are you milking?
Yeah, that's a very complex question here in our world. We've been crossbreeding for a lot of years. And so like most US dairies, we were all Holsteins at one point. Years ago, we started breeding with a lot of Jerseys and then crossbreeding. And by years ago, I mean like 30. And then we did a lot of New Zealand genetics for probably 15 years and
Okay.
kind of looked all over the world for a different type of cow, genetics that would bring real grazing qualities to the cow, kind of the phenotype, or an animal that looks the part, a smaller, more athletic cow. Here in the last 8-9 years, we found a new breed that we just absolutely love. It's called Fleckvieh. It's a dual purpose breed from Germany. And we just are really excited about those. So dual purpose means that they're bred for meat and milk at the same time.
Sure.
And so they just literally take care of themselves better out there on forage.
Okay.
And we lean on grass just as much as any dairy in the country in terms of how many days we graze and what percentage of the diet our cows eat.
Well, tell me about that. Are they out there every day, or what's the rotation like?
Sure. They're out there, I'd say 300 days. And here so the 2 counties on the coast that we're in, Del Norte County here, and we get about 80 to even 90 inches of rain annually. And so we're really wet for say December, January, February.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not smart to be out on grass during those times. The cows just tear up the field. They don't do well. So even though we're still getting 4% of our annual growth in each of those months, we need to protect the fields. And so we utilize freestall barns, and the cows are locked in for a periodically short time, and then they're out in between. When there are good days, they go out. There's always a certain number of young stock out grazing 100% of the time. So yes, we can graze all year long, but we tend to lock in for probably 40 to 80 days, depending on the dairy and the actual situation. Some fields are wetter than others.
Yeah. How does the amount of grazing, what does that do to the quality of the milk? I mean, maybe some listeners
Sure.
aren't too familiar with how, dairy cows operate, but talk about the sort of the nutritional value of the milk. And I imagine that increases with being out on grass more.
Yeah, there's a huge influence. Let's just conjugated linoleic acid is the term, CLAs. Those are the omegas that help really make cancer tumors shrink. Is what I learned about them a long, long time ago. And I'm not a doctor. I'm a farmer, but I believe that, and I understand. What happens to the cow's diet when you pull the grains away and you feed more forages and more pasture. And so one of our 5 farms is 100% grass fed. So we have a green label where we're actually selling that milk. So that milk is extremely high in omega 3s. Really, omega 6 to 3 ratio is about 1 to 1, and 6s are the bad guys. And so that brings the nutritional goodness from the grass, to the meat, milk, and eggs. Really, if you're eating eggs.
Sure.
And so we're excited about that. In the dairy industry, so 1 to 1 would be the 100% grass fed, where we feed some grain to our regular cows, which would be our red label. We're at about 2.5 to 1 on the omega 6 to 3s.
Okay.
And then, the regular dairy industry across the country, non-organic conventional world is probably in the 6 to 1 ratio. So there's not a huge difference because, there's a lot of foods that are 20 to 1 and 100 to 1 and 1,000 to 1. So really, most dairy is bringing that nutritional goodness, but the focus that we have, and my wife Stephanie is really into, animal and human nutrition. The grass goodness comes through the fats in the milk and the fats in the meat, if you will. And so we are a high fat company. So we actually sell a 6% butterfat milk and a 4% and down to 2% is as low as we go. But our 100% grass fed milk is kind of unique in that we just sell whatever the cows gave us that week. There's a QR code on the label, and you look that up with your cell phone and match it to the expiration date on the cap. Oh. And then on the computer will tell you what the cows gave that week, and it might be 4.3, 4.5, 5.3 butterfat. Those are the numbers I've recently saw.
Okay. Cool. I see on your website that you talk about the A2 milk. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So we learned about A2 and A1 proteins in milk back in 2008. A book came out called The Devil in the Milk, and that was written by a professor at Lincoln University, Keith Woodford. And both of our daughters actually studied at that university for just a semester, a short period.
And that's in Nebraska?
Actually in New Zealand.
Oh, in New Zealand. Oh, okay.
New Zealand. Yeah. So this was New Zealand Knowledge or whatever that came out in 07, 08. And basically what was discovered was that there's a histidine where there should have been a proline on this amino acid chain. The amino acid chain is 209 pieces long, and there's just one little molecule out of place. And then because of that, it creates this little protein they call beta casein morphine. It's a 7-chain link that won't break down. And so folks can't digest that milk. And what happens is when you drink that milk, and all of us are exposed to it, it's just kind of this A1 gene that was a mutated gene. It's not something that God created. It's not meant to be in our food system. It's just a mutation that happened. We were unaware of it, I think, as dairy farmers for maybe 1,000 years, and so it got prevalent out there, and so all milk has a little of that in it, and the way it manifests itself is quite simple. A female calf is born, and she gets a gene from mom and one from dad, and she's either getting an A1 or an A2 in real simple terms.
Sure.
And so
keep it simple for me. I like that.
Okay. Yeah. We do a DNA test on our calves, a little hair follicle, and just figure out what they got. And we only use the animals that are A2.
Okay.
And so that means 100% of their milk is the more digestible milk. It doesn't have that histidine where that proline was supposed to be. And it's that simple. So across all populations of cattle, especially here in the U.S., and we have tested a lot of animals, so this is just my own understanding, about about 10 to 15% of the cattle are A1, double bad, you might say. And then about 35% or even better are A2.
Okay.
And then the rest are A1, A2, which is, the other 60 some percent in the middle. And so literally half of their milk is good and half of it's bad. And then of course, in our systems, across the country, milk is kind of merged together in the big tanks and then bottled up. And so, at any one point in time, we're probably all drinking milk that is about 60 to 70% A2 and
Okay.
30% with A1.
Hmm.
And so that's what causes phlegm in your mouth. It's what causes, digestive issues. And a lot of people self-diagnose themselves lactose intolerant. And that's simply not the case most of the time. They're intolerant to this foreign protein.
Oh, okay.
Much similar to grains and the gluten in wheat, for instance, that has kind of changed over time and people are more sensitive to it. And so this is, milk that has changed over time and folks are sensitive to it. So
Right.
it's a big issue. 2/3 of the world's population believes that they're lactose intolerant. So 2/3, it's majority of the folks on the planet. So most of Asia. And so when this knowledge came out in 07, 08, a lot of folks started paying attention and we were one of them, and we started selecting and breeding our cattle immediately in that direction.
Okay.
And I think it's real. Absolutely believe that it's real. We talk to hundreds of people all the time that can't do dairy and they're okay with, with our milk or yogurt and things. And so it tends to make sense.
Okay.
The other thing, Eric, I should add is that all mammal milk is A2, human breast milk. And so, people that think they're lactose intolerant with, the first question would be, well, were you okay on mama's milk? And the answer is usually yes.
Yeah.
And that milk had lactose in it. And so it's the A1 culprit that seems to make a lot more sense.
That is so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I grew up here in Pennsylvania. I grew up next to a dairy farm. They were probably milking like 50 cows back in the, in the 80s. I think by the 90s they were done, and now it's a big, ugly development, cut up into 80 houses or so. So, I've got sort of a soft spot in my heart for dairies because I spent a lot of time on the Culp's farm as a kid. But you have a huge farm compared to what we've got here in Pennsylvania. There's still lots of dairies. Some reports came out recently that we've lost a ton of dairies in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
Because, it's hard to compete when you're milking 40 cows, with the bigger stuff. But can you talk about some of those like pressures, like developmental pressures or economic pressures? What are you guys dealing with out there?
Yeah. Your story is quite common, right? We hear it all the time, all over the place. So I grew up in Ferndale. Our oldest son and his wife are now part of our farm down there that my great grandfather started. And so my dad had his own farm, and it was a rented facility, and we milked 100 to 150 cows by the time I got out of high school. And so I understand, that some of that scenario that you're painting there in Pennsylvania, it's common. It's across the country. It's the same. Out here, we had different facilities, and we didn't need to house our cows so heavily in the winter, but it's very similar. And so the economics of that have changed, and it's very unfortunate. We got into organics about 25 years ago. We made the decision to go in that direction, and we were really chasing an opportunity to get niche marketing, and we had 5 children, and we wanted to make our farm a viable option for them as they grew up and made an adult decision when they met their spouse on where they're going to work. And so that's really what motivated us, and we just got super aggressive, and the rest of our community hasn't, and that's a really sad statement. A year ago today, we had 6 dairies owners in this county that I'm in Del Norte. 4 of them have gone out of business in the last 12 months. And it
Wow.
just makes me sick.
Yeah.
And I want to change that. And, by no means do we want to be the last guy standing. We want to change that milk processing scenario. We want to be able to subsidize smaller farms. consumers would love to do that if we could just give them that opportunity. We really, we're just a better place with, I'd say 20 or 50 dairies again, instead of two. It doesn't support allied services. It's not where we really need to go.
Well, what would you do, or what could you do to change that dynamic?
Really, I'm working with processors and trying to get them to understand the concept first, and maybe a couple dollars a hundredweight incentive for small farms under 100 cows, and a little less for farms under 200 cows, so that there literally is an incentive. And then we just market that with the brands and with the products that are traveling around, and quit selling generic commodity stuff, and brand it, and let the consumer connect to, especially our smaller communities, where consumers really want to be in touch with the farms.
Right.
And so it's kind of a big marketing change, but it's worked for us because we started small and we just keep growing, and it's working at a faster rate all the time. And so I'm encouraged. I don't have the solution yet, but we're having the conversations.
Yeah. Okay. So what you described a little bit sort of to me sounded like a checkoff program. Is that?
Well, there's all kinds of programs. I'm just talking about the market doing it, no government, no
Right. Gotcha.
interaction, just private business doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And we've gotten a lot of attention because of our regenerative status, which we'll talk about here in a bit, probably.
Yep.
But I think with that comes a responsibility to attempt to give back, and with all this attention that we've been able to get, and an opportunity to speak to audiences and to speak to people. So we do want to make a difference, and we're trying to do that here at Alexandre Family Farm with our products, offering the consumer a fuller fat product, which might be the most expensive milk on the shelf, but that's our advertising, is saying, you want the best, here it is.
Right.
And we literally believe that consumers have a right to pay more to get extra. And I think that these values that I'm talking about in supporting smaller farms are part of why Organic Valley started dairy, sales 34 and 5 years ago. And somehow it got industrialized in the era that I've been watching for the last 20 years. And I would like to unwind that just a little, if possible.
Okay. All right. So from what I picked up here, you're a fourth generation dairy farmer, and you
correct.
transitioned from conventional to organic production about 25 years ago. Can you talk about that transition, and then we'll talk about how you moved in further into the regenerative?
Sure. Okay. Again, I think it all started really with a tour in our Suburban back. We were in part of a grazing group. So my family's always grazed cows, even though we were conventional. We've always been a grazing farm, much like, I would say, the PA farms in Lancaster.
Sure.
It's just part of who we are and how we farm, and it's cheaper to grow the feed than to buy it and bring it in. And so we went on a grazing tour with a few of our dairy friends, and we traveled north all the way up to Oregon and Washington State, and visited 6 farms in Tillamook, Oregon on the last day. And we were driving home, kids are all sleeping, and I'm talking to my wife and thinking, how do we create a system where we don't end up like the farmers we had just visited, where 3 of the 6 offered to sell us their ranch when they heard we were from California. And it's just a sad story.
Yeah.
And that's a region that looks and feels exactly like where I grew up. And it's just the writing's on the wall where that's going. And those folks were complacent with their milk price. They had a better milk price than everyone else. They just didn't have motivation to I think, really propagate the next generation to stay in the business. And I'm not sure why. They weren't chasing organic in any way, shape, or form, and they still aren't today. But as we drove home, that's when we just, we got to get into some niche marketing of some sort, because where we live, we've got a lot of friends that I went to college with, and that I know throughout the state, that have moved out of state and built monster big dairies, and just got bigger and bigger. And that wasn't really the model we wanted to follow. We wanted to be able to stay here and make this a viable option. And so um, we had this cool, wet environment that grows grass wonderfully. And so we needed to learn how to, get paid for that.
Yeah.
And so that's how we went into organics. And then I'd say the first thing we learned was about organic matter in soil, and how do we do a better job growing grass? So there's management intensive grazing and rotational grazing, and all those are wonderful tools that I'd learned about, 40 some years ago. Then there's the organic matter that I was really learning about for the first time and really understanding it, and this awareness that as we build that organic matter in our soil, it's the sponge that literally holds everything. It holds more moisture and holds more nutrients, and it holds more biology. And those bacteria and the little life critters that live there, they don't walk, they swim, and so they need that moisture. And so as I learned that, then we started evolving and developing more compost and different things. And so in 2018, our daughter Vanessa got out of college, and I kind of taught her. Our agronomist John and I taught her how to pull soil samples, sent her out, and she pulled soil samples, and we do that every October, or periodically in October, but
Sure.
You don't need a soil sample every year. And she came back with these soil samples on land that we hadn't tested in 10 years. And I thought she had made a lot of mistakes, so we didn't even publish the numbers, and had to do it again a year later. And the numbers were real. And so we had moved from 2-3% organic matter to 8, 10s, 12s, 15s. And
so she didn't have mistakes the first time. You just couldn't believe the numbers.
Just couldn't believe the numbers. Exactly.
Okay.
And we had been through a lot of, a 10-year period where we just had done almost no testing.
Yeah.
And we just focused on converting land to organic, putting out all the compost we possibly could. I worked with Gary Zimmer, the biological farmer, who wrote a book years ago. He's out of Wisconsin, who became a great friend, and had him out here 20 years ago. And he says, Blake, you put too much compost in that field. You got to spread it out more. And so I just had these basic understandings that you drive around, you look at the land, and you say, this is the worst 20 or 30%. You don't need a soil sample to tell you. You just look. And then that's where you put your nutrients. And so we just kept spreading our nutrients as good as we could. And then we invited our community to bring in everything from garden waste to whatever we can get our hands on.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah.
And so we literally now bring in 200 to 300 truckloads of sawdust and shavings per year. And we get that free from a mill in Oregon that needs to help us out on one hand and help themselves out about half the time. And then we also get about 100 truckloads of fish waste of all types.
Okay.
Fish carcasses from 3 counties up and down the coast, and then crab shell and shrimp shell in season, and just other stuff that works into our compost.
So that soil sounds delicious. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. In fact, our son Christian would say that it comes in 3 or 4 flavors. We have chicken flavor because we compost chickens, and we have beef, and we have fish.
Right.
Then we've got regular. Yeah, it's been quite the undertaking, and so that's how we started building soil.
Okay.
And just literally always saying yes to every deal that came along, and bringing in nutrients and composting. Not an intensive compost program. We're just turning it with a front end loader. We put concrete pads where we can so that we can accept it even on rainy days in the mud. And then anyhow, that's how we built our soils.
Yeah.
And so we now irrigate maybe every 30 days, where we used to irrigate every 10 days 30 years ago when we moved here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so it's quite nice during the summer. It's our water holding capacity has improved a bunch on those soils. And then of course yields really improve. We see green grass all year long. We don't see the manure and urine spots that we used to see or our neighbors see because our biology is more active in our soil.
Okay. At what point did you, consider what you were doing to be regenerative? I mean, and that's, these terms, organic and regenerative, they mean something, but I think a lot of people think it might just be marketing. But no, it's based on work, it's based on science. So can you talk about sort of like when you knew that what you were doing was regenerative and you were, forward thinking and that sort of thing?
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't remember the point in time, but it felt like we're doing what we're doing, trying to be the best farmers and stewards of the biology and the soil.
Mm-hmm.
And then along came this movement called regenerative, and it's like, oh, somebody just created a word to define what we do and who we are. That's how I looked at it.
Yeah.
And so we were at a couple of food shows, and again, our daughter Vanessa, we just asked her to participate on these panels or on these trials where two groups, the Savory Institute and the Rock or Regenerative Organic Alliance group, was putting together pilot programs with farms, and they wanted volunteer farms. So we volunteered for both, worked with them for 2, 3, 4 years. And then as we launched our product a year and a half ago nationwide in Whole Foods says, well, you say you're regenerative. Do you have a certificate? And no, we didn't. So we went back to both groups and said, hey, we're launching in January of 21. We would like a certificate. Is that possible? And they said, well, absolutely. We haven't done one yet. No farm's actually certified or verified officially, but
Yeah.
let's speed up the process, literally with both groups. And so we became their very first certified and verified farm, I think,
Wow.
either in the world or definitely in the US. And so that was on our label, that on that milk that launched into Whole Foods nationwide. And
So what did they have to do? Do they have to come out and like check out what you're doing,
oh
or what was that?
yeah,
What hoops did you jump
lots
through?
of stuff during that 3-year trial process. So let's talk about the Savory Institute Land to Market. It's EOV. Ecological outcome verified
Okay.
is the term. And so, they would come out and do cross sections in the field, some permanents and some annual or temporaries, I guess. I don't know what they're called because Vanessa takes care of that.
Sure.
But they're doing soil sampling, plant populations, just a lot of evaluation, a lot of habitat evaluation. Are there trees present in the pasture, or how far are you from riparian areas and different things. And so it was just all really good stuff, and we wanted to help them develop their program, and we wanted to be a participant and
Sure.
understand what was happening on our ground. Rock was kind of very similar in that the Regenerative Organic Alliance, they were more meeting in the back room type thing, and establishing rules and parameters. You couldn't be over this number of cows, and you couldn't do these and things. And so we worked with them to get their 3 pillars of their program somewhat defined, where there's an employee component, and how we treat our working people, and and then how we treat our animals. So an animal welfare, and then of course, the soil component. And so we were just working with them and answering
Yeah.
questions and helping.
Okay.
And then when it was time for us to ask for a piece of paper that verified and certified what we were doing, it worked. And so
And Whole
set
Foods was
out.
like, all right.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how we became America's first regenerative verified certified farm.
Okay.
It's verified with the Savory Group. It's certified with the other one. And we were on the Today Show last year because they heard about it. It was pretty cool.
Nice. Any like words of wisdom or guidance for any listeners out there who might be conventional dairy now, but are toying with moving or?
Yeah, I would tell any farmer this, that these regenerative principles are absolutely they're truth. And so what it is understanding this system that God, our creator, developed, and this biological system of starting with bacteria and fungi and protozoa and microarthropods and the nematodes and all that stuff that live in the soil, understanding what their purpose is, and their and then understanding what our purpose as farmers is. And so as we understand that system, and we kind of do no harm to what's below our feet, then of course they're working for us, and that's the livestock that we're really needing to manage, whether you have a vegetable farm or a dairy farm, and pay attention to that, and your soil will get healthier and healthier. And then you throw in the carbon component. 57% of our organic matter is carbon. And so, that's where this regenerative movement comes along and helps define. It's like all of a sudden, hey, we're doing our part in this, climate change, war that's happening, and we're sequestering carbon. And so that's what green plants do. So again, as a farmer, whether you're organic or conventional, and whether you're growing crops, with or without the use of animals, I think all this needs to be paid attention to, because there's a system that's set in place. We're all participating, and if you're unaware of how the system works, then you're flat out screwing up. and when I drive through California and see a lot of open fields of just bare dirt and bare soil that's baking in the sun, and that's releasing carbon into the atmosphere, that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
If those farmers could understand that, it's costing them fertility, it's costing them yields, and as you do this regenerative process, whether you're organic or not, is kind of secondary in my eyes. And so I wouldn't ask your listeners to switch churches and religions all at the same time, but start considering some of the principles of this new religion, because it truly is connected. And then organicness comes with that. Once you understand that, then you don't want to do anything that really harms the
microbiome. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So.
Okay. Thank you for that. So, last summer I was in your neck of the woods. We were on this, we called it the National Hemp Tour. We were visiting hemp farms, on the fiber and grain side, not the cannabinoids, not the CBD. We were just looking at the industrial applications. And we drove up through the Center Valley of California in like middle of July, and it looked like October in Pennsylvania. Everything was burnt to a crisp. And I imagine, this is, there was forest fires raging everywhere. You had the heat dome. How have you been affected by, the changing climate?
Yeah, I'd say drastically. We drove to Los Angeles here about 3 weeks ago to a Expo West food show, and the hills in California were already drying up.
Wow.
And and it's March. It's like early March, and it's just shocking. And so it's probably not the way it's supposed to be. And again, those hills wouldn't dry up if they were managed differently. They wouldn't dry up as quickly. And so there's a combination of two things going on. One is the kind of the location and farming in a desert, if you will. And then the other one is the management and this lack of understanding of soils and building soil tilth and building organic matter that holds moisture. The 1% increase in a 1% increase on an acre of soil in organic matter is worth 20,000 gallons of water holding capacity.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it's huge. And so, when you start moving at 2% and 10%, it's significant. And that's why we don't need as much water as we used to. And so we're managing our water better, along with our crops, and yields go up. And so, it's a challenge. And certainly this drought that we've had in the West is affecting all of us, whether we're buying feed or just flat out cost, and there's less volumes of stuff.
Sure. Are you hopeful that humanity can turn this thing around?
Yeah, absolutely. I am. that's one of the reasons I love doing, a podcast like this, and trying to do my piece and educating or opening up somebody's mind to, pay attention and to dig into this a little bit, literally. And paying attention to earthworms. And there's a reason that they're out there, and they're an indicator of, they're our scorecard as farmers. And nobody teaches that at a university, and that's really saddens me. I went to 4 years of college, and they didn't teach me that urea kills earthworms, and and that made me mad when I learned it. And 35 years now, I really understand why I was mad.
Yeah.
I intuitively knew that that was wrong. And so all farmers should be paying attention to earthworms and dung beetles and whatever part of the the soil food web that they can see.
Yeah. Okay. And this next question, maybe this is too personal. Don't have to answer it if you don't want. But is there a spiritual aspect to the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Thank you. That's a great question. We're Christians. We got a little cross in my pocket right now that I've had a hold of during this talk. And, our kids, when they were younger, wore a bracelet that said, what would Jesus do? Right. And they wore these little rubber bracelets from the little school that we had them go to. And, what would Jesus do? And I think of that every day. and then that's translated into a simple motto here on the farm is try to do the right thing, and try to do the right thing at every turn. And once you dig into that a little and you understand, what is the right thing? Well, the right thing is honoring the biology and the system that God created for us. And so, spiritually, that's what we do. We put Bible verses embedded in the bottle of our bottom of the bottles on our milk. We don't throw it in people's face, but we try to open the door whenever we can.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple more questions I hear. So I mentioned I was on this hemp tour last year, and this is essentially ostensibly an industrial hemp podcast, but we're branching out. So you're up there in Northern California. There's the Humboldt County is famous for cannabis, and I know Oregon is. But does your farming life intersect ever with that the hemp folks or the cannabis folks, or what's that like up there in your neck of the woods?
Sure. That again, I really appreciate the question. I grew up in Ferndale in Humboldt County, where marijuana was all around us,
Sure.
Absolutely everywhere, and it was crazy. And I've seen a lot of my friends, kind of lead a bad life, in my opinion. And so I was really anti that stuff, right? Just in general. So when we're in Del Norte County, just north of there now, right between the Oregon border and Humboldt. So we're a little bit of an oasis here. And so our county about 8 years ago or 7 years ago was putting together a task force to create policy for the local community. And we were invited to be part of that first. One of our kids, then Stephanie, and then they finally decided, no, we need Blake here. And so I became part of this task force, or this committee, to create the cannabis ordinance for our county. And eventually I was the chair of this group, but we went in day one. There's 19 of us in the group originally, and I just got a feel for the room. And at the end of this 3-hour session, I just asked for a show of hands. I just say, I'm farmer here, and I'm really anti-marijuana. How do you all rate? Who's on my team and who's on the other team?
Yeah.
So I was the only guy on my team, and it was cool. I was just being honest. I just grew up not liking it, not liking a handful of my friends that are no longer with us, and how they how it affected their life in a very negative way. And so I have a personal bias, right?
Okay.
But it was really cool because we narrowed the group down to about 7 of us. It was me and my 6 pothead friends, I called them, and I had their permission to say that. And we were just awesome. We were successful. We didn't vote on things. We did everything by consensus. We worked on that committee for a good 2.5 years, public meetings that were televised, and public input, and we wrote the ordinance. And I first explained to them that, hey, if 20 years ago or so, or somebody would have came to me and asked me to write an ordinance for organic dairy farming in this county, it would have been great, right? I would have written some really nice rules. And the first rule that I convinced them to do was, let's not blow this thing up. We don't need an industrial hemp operation down the road with 200 employees, because we don't have 200 employees in this small county. We don't need that. What we need is a niche deal, right? We've got our neighbors to the north and to the south that are blowing this thing up, and probably not in a great way. And so we see I fully understand the negative side, the bad side to the breaking all the rules out there in the environment.
Yeah.
And so that's what was in my mind. It was like, how do we put guardrails on this process? And we did a great job doing that. And so we were able to, kind of distract from the Bolivians coming in here and starting up, Mexican cartels. And we kept it where it's a pretty decent piece of our community.
Okay.
It's small enough to where the locals that wanted to, engage in that, growing and processing, have been able to do that. And so, we literally dealt with the tax rates, the rules, the where you can grow, where you can process, where you can sell, and helped write all those rules. And I think it was terribly successful, actually.
All right, good. Yeah, I mean, I'm a believer in industrial hemp, the industrial applications, what we can make out of it, how we can sequester carbon with it. It's the grain is a superfood, the herd inside the stalk is great for building materials. And I think that's the big story. At some point, the marijuana stuff is just going to be a footnote to the larger story. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and I understand that side as well. I think I listened to one of your podcasts or somebody recently with the FSA guy and national interest.
Right.
And so the policy folks.
Yep.
And how I think just his statement was, we had a great thing going once and we threw it away for probably no reason. And so, it's back and we just need to make the best of it. And so, I'm here to help.
Good.
Come on.
All right. Well, Blake Alexandre from Alexandre Family Farm, it is great to talk to you today. Is there anything else I should ask you? I mean, I think we covered a whole lot there.
Well, I would maybe just give a shout out to the folks, the hemp growers, really, that I know through the agronomist I work with, he's worked with them. He's out of Oregon. And, I know that those folks have been paying attention to soil at a lot faster rate than us traditional farmers. And so, kudos and compliments to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. And so, again, we need healthy products and we need healthy plants and soil.
Yeah.
And so, I just appreciate that.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, thanks again, Blake Alexandre. Great talking to you.
Okay. Thank you, Eric.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right. Well, that pretty much does it for the show today. Thank you for listening. Before we go, I wanted to remind you of a couple of things. First, the Pennsylvania Hemp Summit is just a couple of weeks away. It's April 26th and 27th in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. You can learn more about that at pahempsummit.com. I hope to see you there. And then also the iHemp Midwest Hemp Expo in Michigan is in May on the 20th and 21st. I hope to see you there too. I'll put links to both of these summits on the show page for this episode. Something else I wanted to let you know about is a hemp special section that's going to be in the Lancaster Farming newspaper on the April 23rd edition, so be on the lookout for that. Lots of great hemp stories and information there. So, okay, that pretty much does it for me today. Thank you for listening. My name is Eric Harlock. I'm the digital editor at Lancaster Farming newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out online at lancasterfarming.com, and while you're there, get yourself a subscription. Okay, until next time, I will see you in the newspaper.
Industrial hemp.
Season 2, Episode 16 is copyright 2022 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, which is part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written and recorded, edited and produced by Eric Harlock, and any music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tinbird Shadow.